Hello guys, let's do some tactics training today. Okay, so in this position, it is white's turn to move. Knight takes b2 as the last move by black. So if we're going to analyze this, we see that black has two hanging pieces that we can exploit. Alright, so the first hanging piece is the knight on b2. And the other piece that is hanging is the bishop or the rook on e8. So, can we fork the rook and the knight? Which means that we put a piece on a certain square that attacks both pieces. If your guess is queen to b5, then your answer is correct. You see? So, queen b5 attacks the rook on e8 and the knight on b2. So after that, queen c6, then we can capture the knight on b2. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move, and there is a mating threat here. There's a mating threat. And the tactics here that we can apply is, the first one is queen sacrifice. Okay, so you may say, oh, there's a bishop, so the bishop will just capture that. Yes, but we can capture back with the rook, and we still have the bishop to support that. And there are a couple of tactics applied here, and the first one is sacrifice. Okay, and the second one is the X-ray attack. Okay, so what is X-ray attack? So X-ray attack is when you attack your opponent from behind. So for example, this one, in this case, the bishop is the defender. Bishop is the main defender, but there's an attacking force here, which is the bishop, the dark squared bishop. And this light squared bishop is in front of the defending bishop. Now, the queen attacked from the back of the dark squared bishop. Okay, so that is X-ray attack. Because even if the bishop captures on h8, the bishop here is still actively defending the rook on h8 after the exchange. Okay, and this particular mating pattern is called the opera mate. Alright, next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Queen to d1 check is the last move by white. And to defend the king here from the check, we should place it in a square, on a square where there will be no follow-up check, and that is h2, right? h2, king h2. There's no follow-up check after that, because if you put your bishop or your king on g2 after this move, checkmate is next. Okay, so that's wrong. So the best move here is to move your king to h2, and that buys you time. Okay, okay, so king h2, and then what's next? Now we can do this move, bishop to a6. Okay, and then the queen moves to g7. We can capture that. After that, we can capture the bishop. So white is winning the exchange here. Okay, next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Bishop to d2 was the last move by white. Okay, so what's the best move here? Okay, so I think the best move here for black is to capture the rook on c2. After rook takes c2, white will capture with bishop takes c2, and as you can see, the bishops and the king are lining up in the same rank. So now we can attack the second rank by placing the rook on a2. Okay, and the bishop will be forced to capture on d1. But after that, rook takes d2 check, forks the king and the bishop, and now we can capture the bishop, and black is winning here in material. Okay, next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Queen takes b4 was the last move by black. Okay, is there a mating attack here? Yes, can you see the mate into here? This is a two moves mate puzzle. If you are thinking of queen to e8 check, then your answer is correct. Because after, say, king g5, queen to h5 is checkmate. Or maybe king h6, queen to h5 is still checkmate. Okay? Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move, and rook a5 check is the last move by black. Can you guess the answer here? Actually, the rook is free, right? We can just capture the rook. Yeah. It's an easy one, but sometimes if you're looking at the board and you got confused that maybe that pawn is defending the rook, and then you might just move your king away from the rook. Okay, but in this case, it's not. The rook is actually hanging. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook f to e1 was the last move by white. Okay, so we have a second rank weakness here that we can exploit. And how are we going to exploit that second rank weakness? Yes, that is by moving the rook to c2. And by moving the rook to c2, that forces the queen to actually capture on c2. Okay, you know why? You know why? Because there's a mating threat. So say for example, if white decides to just save the queen, then queen takes f2, and then queen takes g2 is checkmate on the next move. Okay? Next. Okay, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. d3 was the last move by black, attempting to promote the pawn. But that won't happen. You know why? The promotion won't happen because there's a mate into here. Can you see the mate into here? We can see that these double pawns here are powerful. Okay? And we can use the power of these double pawns by capturing the pawn on h7, queen takes h7, king takes h7, and now rook to h4 is checkmate because the king has no squares to go to. Alright? Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook takes d6 was the last move by white. Okay. Okay, so what's the answer to this puzzle? We can see that white is actually attempting to promote the pawns, right? So can we capture the rook on d6? Maybe we can, yes, because after rook takes d6, c takes d6, then we can push the pawn. Okay? And we can promote that. Because after king f2, we can just move the king to d2. And then, for example, if white tries to push the pawn again, we can promote to queen, and then once the king moves, we can catch that pawn, and white cannot promote that pawn. Okay? Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. King to f4 was the last move by white. Okay. So in here we can see that yeah, we can see here that the king and the bishop are lining up on this on the fourth rank. Can we exploit that? Yeah, maybe. Let's try. Rook h4 check. The king captures on the pawn on f5. After rook takes, what happens? Rook takes d4, then rook to g8. That forces the king to move to c7, but the bishop is safe here. And after the exchange, we can see that black is a bishop up. Okay. Next, in this next position, bishop to e6 was the last move by black. It is white's turn to move. And the knight is quite busy defending the bishop here. Okay. So what we can do is to capture the defender by capturing the knight. Let's capture the defender. So after that, the queen captures on c7, and then now we can freely capture the bishop on e6. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Okay. So queen takes c3 was the last move by black. And we can distract this rook from defending the queen, because the queen is being defended by this rook. So the question is there a way for us to distract this rook from defending that? Yes, by making a check on d8, rook to d8 check. So what happens after that? Rook takes d8, leaving the protection of the queen. Now we can capture the queen on c3. Alright. Next, in this next position, rook takes b7 was the last move by black, and it is white's turn to move. Okay, so obviously what we can do here, okay, so the king is busy defending the rook, and the rook is under threat from white's rook. So can we distract this king from defending that rook? I think yes. And how are we going to do that? By skewering the king and the rook. So skewer is when a more important piece is in front of the less important piece. So this is skewer, and that attracts the king towards that square, leaving the protection of the b7 rook. We can just capture that. Okay. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook takes b2 was the last move by white. Okay, so if we are to capture here, what are we going to capture? Because at the moment we can see that it is obvious that we can capture the rook, but there is a better capture here, and that is what? So as you can see, we have a discovered attack here. By removing the knight, we can actually we can actually attack the queen on d3. But how are we going to do that? It is by capturing the pawn on a3. That is a check. So black checks the king, the white king, and the white king must move because of the check, right? So after the king moves somewhere, the queen is left undefended. Now we can capture that queen. Okay. Next. Okay, so in this next position, rook takes d2 was the last move by white. It is black's turn to move. So I think there's a discovered attack again here in this position. And we can see that the rook, the knight, and white's rook are lining up on this e-file. And there is a check again, okay? So that is discovered attack. White must do something about the check. So knight to d3 check, rook takes d3. After rook takes d3, we can freely capture the rook on e1, okay? Okay, so next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Queen to d4 was the last move by black. Okay, so can we just simply capture that queen? I think no. There's a better move here. What is that move? We can see that the knight on f5 is hanging. So how are we going to exploit that weakness? Of course, by checking on c8, queen to c8 check, and that attacks the hanging knight. So black king must move. After that, we can capture the knight on f5. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. King to h7 was the last move by black. Is there a mating attack here? Yes, there's a mating attack here. And what would it be? That is knight to f6, check. After that, if black goes to h8, then rook to g8 is checkmate. Okay, but what if black goes to h6? Still, rook to g6 is checkmate, and that mating pattern is called Vukovic mate. All right. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. King to f5 was the last move by black. And we have a mating attack here. Can you see the mating attack here? Because the bishops, white's bishops are really powerful. It's so powerful that it creates a mating net around the king. So all we need to do is to make a check on c8. Right? And so the only defense that can be done by black here is to cover it with the bishop. But that will just be taken. Bishop takes d7 is checkmate. Okay? So it's a double bishop mate, and this is called the Boden's mate, this mating pattern. When you have a bishop here and another bishop there and some pieces that are covering up the king's escape square. All right. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook takes f8 was the last move by white. Okay, so what are the weaknesses in white's position here? We can see that the king is really vulnerable. And what we can actually do here is to check the king, right? Queen to d2 check. That forces the king to move back. And after that, queen d1 is checkmate, okay? Because the king is left undefended on the back rank. So the king has a the white's position has a back rank weakness. All right. Next, so in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Knight takes d4 is the last move by black. And it's a check. So the king must move. And if you are to move the king, where are you going to place it? Well, let's place it on a square that attacks the knight. Okay. So now there are two black pieces that are under attack. And black can only save one. So if, for example, he tries to save the knight on d4 by moving it to f5, now we can capture the knight on e8. Okay? Next. In this next position, we have a mate in 1. Is this a mate in 1? Can you see mate in 1 here? Yeah. Although black has plenty of pieces, 2 queens and a rook and a bishop, but there's actually a mate in 1 here. Queen takes h7 is checkmate. Okay. Next, in this next position, king takes d6 was the last move by white. It is black's turn to move. Okay, so what's the best move here for black? So we can see here that the bishop is hanging on e3. Can we capture that by doing the check? Queen to d3 check. King to c6. Then we can capture this. Okay. But what happens if the queen checks on c8? We can just move the king. So this is winning for black because black is up a piece after the exchange. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. All right. Now, this is a tricky one. This is a tricky one, but actually there's a check. There's a mating attack here. So can you see the mating attack here? Yeah, the mating attack here is because you see this is very powerful. The battery of the queen and the bishop along this long diagonal is really powerful. So by capturing the pawn on g2, bishop takes g2. After bishop captures back on g2, then queen takes g2. That is checkmate. Okay. Okay, next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move, and we have a mating attack here. Can you see the mating attack? Queen takes h7 check, king to f8. Oh, what's next? Queen to g8 check, king to e7, and now queen to g7 is checkmate. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Knight a5 check is the last move by black or white. Okay, so we can capture that knight, right? And then black captures, and then we can capture it back. Okay, next. Okay, next. So in this next position, it's black's turn to move. Queen or bishop takes f4 was the last move by white. We can capture that bishop, right? Because it's hanging. And after, say, queen to d5, attempting to still defend this knight, but that's useless because there are two attackers to that knight. So queen takes f7, that's hanging, that's free. Okay, next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Rook to c8 was the last move by black. And by moving the rook to c8, black practically removed the last escape square for its bishop. So a6 is the best move here. After a6, the bishop on b7 is trapped, and it is forced to just capture that. Okay, so white is winning. Next, in this next position, queen to e2 was the last move by white. It is black's turn to move. Okay, so we can see here that the knight is being defended by this rook. So can we capitalize on that one? What happens if we capture this knight? Because at the moment there's a back rank weakness here. If the rook captures on a5, then the next move will be rook to c1 check. Okay. If white tries something like rook to d1, then we can just simply capture that, and it's mate on the next move. So the best move after rook to c1 will be just to sacrifice the queen. But same thing, rook takes, king takes, and the rook is still hanging. And black is winning after that. Next, in this position, rook c3 was the last move by white. It is black's turn to move. So what are the weaknesses here that we can see? We can see that there is an X-ray attack here that we can do. So the defending piece, rook, in front of it is this rook on c8, and behind it is a bishop. that we can capture. Okay, so if we capture on the bishop on c2, so that's called an X-ray attack. We attack the piece from behind, and now after bishop takes c8, the rook may capture on c8, but the knight will just capture it. Okay, so the rook cannot capture here because there's a rook here to capture it back on c2. Okay, next, in this next position, rook takes d7 is the last move by black. Okay, so what will be the best move here for white? So white's queen is under attack by the bishop. But the rook is hanging, right? I mean, there's a piece that protects it, the queen. But of course, once we save our queen by doing a check or making a check on b8, the king moves up here. Now the queen is safe, and then we can capture the rook on d7. Okay. Next, in this next position, h4 was the last move by white. Okay, so we can see here that the rook on d4 is hanging, but we cannot just simply capture that because it will open the line towards the rook, and the rook will just simply capture the rook on c5. So what we need to do is to protect this rook first by making a check on a5, because the bishop is here to protect the rook. So the king now must move. After the king moves, we can now capture the rook on d4, and if he captures on a5, we have the bishop to capture it back. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Knight to e7 was the last move by white, and we can see that white has a powerful battery along the d file. So what can we do here? What we can do here is to capture the one of the rooks. Okay, so rook takes d2, rook takes d2, and now we can simply capture the knight on d7 or e7. Okay, because earlier what happened is that we cannot just simply capture it because there's a battery of rooks here, and after the exchange you see that white is up in exchange. So the best thing here is to capture that rook first. After he captures back there, we can capture the knight on e7 for free. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. King to f8 was the last move by black. So what's the best move here? Okay. What happens if we capture on f5? Knight takes f5. This is a dangerous position for black. You know why? Because there's a mating net. The knight is actually occupying two escape squares for the king, and the white's queen can mate from the back rank. It's either by h8 or by b8, and the queen is currently defending h8, but the b8 needs to be defended, and there is no way for the queen to defend both of these squares. Okay, so black is forced to just capture the knight, and black is winning the exchange here. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. f6 was the last move by white. Okay. Is there a mating threat? Yes, certainly there is a mating threat. And what can we do to mate? Okay. Can you see the sacrifice here, the move here? Rook takes h2 is the correct move. Okay. That forces the king to capture on h2, and then queen to g3 check. The king moves back to h1, and now queen h3 is checkmate. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. King takes h3 is the last move by white. We can check on h8, right? Check. The king can move to g4, but after that, the battery is disconnected, okay? Because there's a king on g4. So now we can capture the rook on g6, okay? Next, in this next position, bishop to e4 was the last move by white. So is there a way for us to mate the king? Apparently no, but we can win in material here. How can we win in material? That is by maybe capturing this pawn here, because there's a mating threat. Okay, so white must do something about it, and the only defense here that white has is to capture this, right? Otherwise it will be mate on the next move, but that leaves the bishop, okay, unsupported. So black is winning in material. Next, in this next position, rook to e5 was the last move by black. It is white's turn to move. So can you see the fork here? Knight fork on e7, okay, or f7, attacks the king on d8 and the rook on e5. So after king c8, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, white is winning. Okay. Next, in this next position, a5 was the last move by white. Okay. So, what's the best move here? Okay. So by a5, white is threatening to capture on the knight on b6. Okay. But we can see that this rook is pinning the knight against the rook on c3, and we can also, and this knight is actually defending the queen, so we can capture the queen. So after capturing the queen, the knight is forced to capture the queen back, and now that leaves the c file open, and then we can capture the c3 rook, and c takes b6, a takes b6. After the exchange, black is up a piece. Okay. Next, so in this next position, d takes e3 was the last move by black. It is white's turn to move. Can you guess the best move here for white? I think there's a mating attack here, or is there? Well, there's a fork here that we can do, because at the moment the rook on a8 is hanging, right? Check. If the king moves to, say, like here, what happens if the king moves there? Queen b7 check, that forces the king to move back, and after that, or maybe here, yeah, and then after that, there, white is up a piece. Okay. Okay, so in this next position, queen takes e4 was the last move by white. It is black's turn to move. We can capture back the queen with the knight. Okay, so knight takes e4, and then g takes f3, and then knight takes d2, king takes d2. So why is that so? Okay, so first of all, Knight takes e4. Why did not white save its rook, for example? Why did white do that? For example, maybe put the rook here on b2. Well, the reason why is because of what? Because black can push the pawn, right? So after that push, what happens? Maybe the king can go somewhere here, right? And after this, check. The king can capture that, and then the knight can again fork the rooks. So after a series of exchanges, black is still winning here. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook d2 was the last move by white. Okay. Okay, so we can see now here that the rook is spinning this pawn against that rook. Okay. So what happens if we capture the bishop on c4? After b takes c4, we can capture the rook on a3. Okay. Because of that pin. Next, in this next position, we have a mate in 2. Can you see mate in 2 here? Yes, that is by sacrificing the rook. Rook takes h3. After queen takes h3, that is checkmate. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. King to f2 was the last move by white. The rook is hanging. The bishop is hanging. What's the best move here? There's a mating threat. Okay, so rook c8 is checkmate. So what can we do? If we capture on h7, the rook will check here, right? But no worries, we can move up to f7, and if he checks again, skewering the king and the queen, we have the saving move, which is knight to e7 to cover the king, and the queen is safe. Okay. Next, in this next position, rook to e8 was the last move by black. It is white's turn to move. Okay, so what can black do or white do here? Is there a mate here? Yes, there is. If black moves differently. Okay, so queen to d4, check. Okay. If black moves here, what will happen? So what will happen is this. Check. He moves back there. Okay. And then another check here. Or maybe yeah, check. Moves here. I don't know, maybe queen to f6, check. Not really sure. But what we can do here, But after queen to d4, the best move actually is to cover the check with the bishop. Bishop to e5. And now knight takes e5. Okay? So queen d4. Then let's capture that. Okay? Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Bishop to f4 was the last move by black. And the queen is busy defending two minor pieces, the knight on e7 and the bishop on f4. And by capturing the bishop on f4, the queen will capture on f4. The knight is left undefended. We can capture that knight. Okay. Next, rook takes e6 was the last move by black here. It is white's turn to move, and the rook is hanging on e6. So we can make a check on f8 check. The king moves up to h7, queen to h7 check. King moves back to h8. Now the queen can capture e6. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to it is black's turn to move, and there's a mate in one here. Can you see mate in one? Yeah, queen takes f1 is checkmate. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook takes d1 was the last move by white. So can we capture on d1? Yes, of course. And now white can push this, right? But black can also push the pawn. And after bishop to, say, e2, trying to stop the promotion, c1, promoting the queen, rook takes d1, then black is winning because he already have a queen. Okay. And white wasn't able to promote its pawn on c7. The position here is the black goes in this direction. Okay, so the king can capture the pawn, right? So is there a way for black to stop the promotion of this pawn? No. So let's push that. a4. Now f5. So this is a race to promotion. a5, f4, and then a6, f3, a7, f2, and then a8 queen, and it has a check. So black cannot promote its pawn because it's a check. Okay, and white can do something about it to stop the promotion. Okay, and later on capture all the pawns and win the game if white knows what to do. Okay. Next. Okay, in this next position, it is rook takes b5 was the last move by white. So can we just capture it? Yes, we can just capture it. A takes b5 is the best move here. Okay, next. In this next position, it is white's turn to move. Queen takes f6 was the last move by black. And can you see a way for us to win a queen here? Yes, that is by coercing the king, by distracting the king from defending the queen. So rook to g8 check forces the king to move away from the queen, either by capturing the rook on g8 or maybe moving somewhere else, but wherever the king moves, that leaves the queen undefended. Okay.